Welcome in. Susan Corbett, custom machine quilter here. Today we're going to quilt a Sue Spargo Folktales wool quilt. It's just full of cute little critters and a ton of really impressive hand embroidery. So I've put it on the frame sideways. And the quilting by far is mostly this, outline quilting all the little shapes. And for those of us who are really machine quilters who love what we do, this is fun. This is slow, painstaking, absorbing work that's really satisfying. And one of the challenges with doing a quilt like this is negotiating around all the different thicknesses. So what I'm doing is stabilizing the quilt, not just quilting it. And you always run into the problem of stabilizing before you can stabilize. The fabric wants to move. So I find I'm frequently pressing down on it to keep it from shifting. So that's one thing. Quilting one-handed for part of it. Figuring out a path. What I want to do here is quilt as much as I can without starting and stopping. So that means hopping from one element to another and deciding what I'm going to quilt and what I'm not going to quilt. What I'm quilting this with at the moment is clear thread. There, my thread just broke. So here's a great example of a thick patch. So I'm going around as much as I can to begin with. It's tricky quilting around the little loose parts. I don't want to quilt those down. I want to quilt around them. And sometimes it just cooperates really easily. And other times I have to really try and get those things out of the way, but still quilt right up against them. And one of the things I'm deciding as I go is what am I going to do with the backgrounds? A lot of people would say, well, there's not much you can do. Oh, but there is. I could or I might not. I don't know. We'll have to see how this one, see what it says to me and see how it behaves. I'm floating the top. That's what that pin is there for, to hold it in place. And here I've run out of room. The machine has run up against that front bar. I get asked a lot, how do you decide when to stop? Well, when you run out of room is one answer. Okay, so I'll pick up that last little tip when I scroll up, either with more clear thread or when I change thread to do the border. A little tiny bit of backtracking just for expediency's sake. I've got clear thread in the top and I've got a so fine 50 weight polyester thread in the bobbin. So as per usual with a wool quilt, the thread is going to sink deep into the pile. So it's not going to be real visible. So I can use pretty much whatever I want to in the bobbin, I mean, color-wise. So I picked a thread that would match the backing fabric, which is really, it's a wonderful print from Africa that you'll get to see way deep into the video. So either fast forward or stick around and wait for that. That fabric is pretty heavy. It's a thick cotton with a whole lot of body to it. You know, it's a wax print, so that adds some stiffness to it. So for the combination of that fabric with a lot of body and all these layers of wool, I chose to put Hobbs Thermore in this quilt. It's a super thin poly bat that is low loft, but it still has loft. So that's going to help us out a little bit. It's extremely lightweight, see-through. It doesn't matter if it's really warm or not. I didn't need a whole lot of loft here because the wool is already going to give us that. And it did need some batting. I would not forego the batting on a quilt like this. You can put in something pretty thick or really thin or whatever you like. But the more thickness you add, the more weight I think you're going to add. And this is a heavy quilt already just because of all the wool. I like to think of the quilting around a big round patch like that as not quilting, but more outlining. That helps me mentally not get hung up on the perfection of hitting the line. If I think I'm just tracing with that presser foot and forget about the quilting stitches that are going in there, it seems to go better. And look what a difference that makes. I outline because, well, lots of reasons, but mainly because of the definition it gives to the pieces. It defines the appliqué and really features it. And this way I can control what I want to accentuate. You want the appliqué to really show. And this really features it. So there's that thick part. I'm pressing down with my finger to get it to be as flat as possible. And so it won't shift. Quilting around all the little, not all, around the major embroidery flowers and such. I would never quilt indiscriminately on top of them. I want to define them. So I'm going to be quilting right around the edge of that road, all the little elements of it, inside and outside and down that center stripe. You won't see the quilting, but it will make the embroidery look better. Whatever you don't quilt down sticks right up. So I don't want what sticks up to be indiscriminate. And with clear thread, I feel fairly emboldened not to run roughshod over it all, but if there's a little imperfection, if I step on the appliqué here and there, you're not going to see it. I can't always get a quilt with not a lot of stops and starts. I mean, one continuous line is a difficult thing to try and go for, but I still try. And here I can think, what am I going to do with that little tail? Because it's sticking right up. Do I want to quilt around it or just move it out of the way or what? And how? Some days I'm very creative, and other days I'm not at all. So this is a good thing to do on your non-creative days. When the decisions you have to make are not what design shall I do next, it's just where to quilt or where not to quilt next. There, I could have ditch quilted from one place to another. I don't know why I that just didn't occur to me at the time. Oh well. So here's how I can get out of a little backtracking. Quilt this part first and then go around the antlers. So I'm pushing that tail out of the way to quilt around the perimeter of this guy. There's always some or a lot of that to do on these wool quilts. The first time I did one of these, I was really afraid of it for about 3 seconds. And then, and then I saw, oh, this is just like pretty much quilting any other quilt. I went through the whole, raise the height of the presser foot and change the presser foot. And that was kind of unnecessary. It created problems. Getting the machine back to where it was before was a trick. That messed with a lot of factors, more than you might think. It's great when you overcome any kind of fear with machine quilting. It's nice to find a place where some elements almost touch, because then it's just a little short trip from the top of that beast to those flowers. and that gets more of a continuous line. If you think you're going to quilt your fingers, that would be a great time to use some little tool to move those 3D embroidery pieces out of the way. If you weren't going to do all this close edge stitching around the embroidery and the appliqué, I don't know what you would do, but I think you would end up with a lumpy mess that wouldn't be anywhere near as attractive as this is going to be. Well, as this already is, as is readily visible. I think if you put this much work into constructing this top, you've got to complete the job with some more custom and not find the quickest, cheapest, fastest way to finish it up. But if you were to quilt this one really sparsely, and this is not going to end up being very heavy, but if you were to go really sparse, it'll sag, and that will look really bad. Quilting serves a lot of utilitarian purposes. It's structural, not just decorative. And that's why outlining and ditch quilting are really crucial. It was such a short distance between that dark patch and the top of that bird, so I just took a few stitches over as opposed to stopping and starting to outline it. But that's a judgment call. Sometimes those things cooperate, and sometimes they really don't. This is not about precision. This particular set of quilting is going to be largely imperceptible. Yeah, instead of quilting around that, let's just get those things out of the way and quilt over it. To quilt or not to quilt around those patches like this one? Oh, I think it looks better quilted. I like it. Here's another pretty puffy element. So here the question is, am I going to quilt around that middle circle? Can I? Will the presser foot go there? Will it be okay without it? I'm tiptoeing through the tulips here to get over to that flower. So what do you think? I think it's got to be quilted. In real life, that made a huge difference. I don't know if you can see it from this angle. We are getting there. So we're kind of getting down to it. This isn't a video of all of the quilting, but you know, a good part of it. And this has given us lots of time to think about, will there be quilting in the backgrounds? And what am I going to do in the border? Because I don't know. This quilt didn't say to me very immediately, oh, definitely do X. So what are the choices here? I could try and drop in some more motif, you know, quilt in some more little animals and plants, but I don't think it needs it. I think this has plenty going on. So maybe a texture. And these round bands of embroidery gave me an idea that I really like. So what I did was I started, you know, I've gone into the body of the quilt just a little bit so there's no hard, fast line of demarcation between the border quilting and the backgrounds. I've sort of anchored the border quilting in the appliqué a little for a nice merger. And all this is either spirals or circles with a bunch of echo, with more echo than anything else. I did this over a huge background on another quilt recently and loved the texture. Love, 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 love. This works as a little tiny background meander. It looks great, in a medium size. It looks great quite large. And gosh, look, I already love it there. Love it. I felt that round was what this border needed. One, because there's all those little squares that are in there. So that's going to make a nice counterpart. There's a lot of, in the appliqué, there's a great mix of round and pointy and square and triangular. So some more round is just as good a choice as any other. And this pattern it could go in a tribal direction very easily. There's no shape more basic than a circle. It's fun to do, which you really want when you're machine quilting. Look how nicely it encircles that embroidered flower there in the blue variegateds. I switched threads. This is Omni by Superior. It's a polyester. It's good and strong. I think the color, if I'm not much mistaken, is called Stormy Sky. It's a blue-gray that's really versatile, and I use it all the time. And it fit really well in here. Not all the blues in the background are the exact same one, so that's going to blend really well. And once again, it's going to sink right into that pile. So I don't need to call attention to the thread color here. You want all the attention to go to the appliqué and embroidery. So I needed a good disappearing, blending type of thread color. And there you get a peek of the backing fabric on the left. Being in the border, in and around those squares and the appliqué shapes, there's just going to be a lot of stops and starts. Really great texture happening here, which is one of the good things about wool. Internal battle. Do I quilt around those little houses or not? So I decided to integrate the border quilting in here by following those lines a little bit, and then we can branch out into the circles. Just a little background meander. Ground meander. And this border went really quickly. Compared to everything else, this was the fastest part of the quilt. Had you done it very, very small, that would have been fine. That's doable. I didn't think it was particularly necessary here, so I went with this kind of medium to large. And it's not very large. And this is just a meander. Anybody can do it. You don't have to have a border pattern. The bobbin ran out. Here's the finished quilt. So let's examine a few things. All right, for some reason I did not quilt around that stitching around each circle, which I would normally do. I guess it was not crying out for it this time. Also, surprisingly, I didn't quilt too much on the background. What I did do that you are not going to be able to see very readily is I ditch quilted. Right in these seams. Not every single one of them, but largely, because they were sticking out. On quilts like this, I have previously quilted right around all the little embroideries, but this time I just didn't get that vibe. And I think they're okay. So, I'm loving the way the border looks. See all that good texture, which is what I had planned on. And so in a few places you see how the border quilting starts in the body of the quilt, but only a little, dipping in here and there. This part was really puffing up, so I quilted that just in and around to get it to be flat. I did quilt it around all of those squares. Okay. I quilted right inside this circle here and then around the perimeter. So there's that, and also up on this sun, the same kind of thing happened. And I think that looks really good. I'm liking the way that turned out. Let's see. This is my favorite little critter. Isn't that funny? I think that's really funny. Okay, one last thing. This is what I'm coming to. That lion head is extremely puffy, and I didn't think I could successfully quilt on it, although I do think it needs to be quilted right around here and right around the face. So I'm going to do it by hand. First of all, here's a look at the back. All right, so this is not fine hand quilting. Don't get that impression at all. But here's how we start if you've never seen that process before. You make a knot and with a long tail and push that into the fabric and pull it just so the knot is in between the layers. And then you can take off hand quilting and cut off that the tail later on. This is not what great hand quilting looks like, not even pretending to be that wonderful. There's no way to take 3 stitches or more in this kind of thickness. That's just never going to work. So what I'm doing is stab stitching. And in the end, I think it looked pretty bad on the back, but so thankfully it's a busy print and that won't show. I've told customers over the years, there's a place on your quilt that really needs some hand quilting. And they go, yeah. And then I'm pretty sure that never gets done. But I felt really strongly that this guy needed to be quilted. So I thought, well, it's not very much. So I'm doing it. I picked a thread. It's Superior So Fine. It's a color called Straw that I thought would be kind of invisible up against both the backing fabric and this lion head. So as we go around the lion head, I think you'll be able to see, even from this distance, what a great big difference it's making. If you don't put any quilting there, it's just going to sag. And that lion head is going to be so undefined and 3D that, it's not going to do anything for the quilt. With everything else all buttoned down nice and tidily, it would be weird for this head to be so bulbous. Look already. There's wonderful definition happening. So I think it's so worth doing. And I think if you love quilting, you like it in whatever form it takes. There's lots of ways to quilt something. In total, this little bit of quilting took about 10 minutes. This quilting will be good for the quilt. If you leave a big space unquilted, it's going to wear unevenly. And over time, that will not be a good thing. That'll take its toll. Gravity is practiced here on this planet. So I want to nail down what I want nailed down. I was a hand quilter back in the very beginning. That did not last very long. I have teeny tiny wrists, and I had a job at the time that involved keyboard work, and I was starting to get carpal tunnel syndrome. And hand quilting really hurt my wrists a lot. And then I discovered Harriet Hargrave's machine quilting book and was transfixed. And that's all I wanted to do was machine quilt. So the hand quilting took a back seat for a long time. And I have been revisiting it in small doses over the past couple years and love it. I don't love doing it as much as I love the way it looks, because you can't beat hand quilting. Okay, so while we're at this point, see how close the head is to the first round of main scallops. Let's go ahead and quilt the scallops. And then when we get back to this point, I can finish quilting the head. And to finish this line of stitching, you flip it over on the back, make another knot, and bury that knot in this deep pile, and then clip your thread. And there's a lot of pile here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 layers of wool with batting in the middle and a super thick cotton in the bottom. That's a lot of thickness. And one of the things I'd like to recommend, there's a book out there, I think it's by Anita Shackelford, about mixing hand quilting and machine quilting and how beautiful those results can be. So there's a quilt I'm working on, a feathered star with a printed square in the middle. And a friend asked me, how are you going to quilt that? And I think I told her I think I'm going to hand quilt that part. Outline the print and maybe do some hand stippling in the background, which is one of my favorite things in the world. It's so gorgeous. Hand stippling is super close echo quilting. And it's just divine. Not what we're doing here today. And there's a whole lot of wisdom you can get out of those hand quilting books that cross over into machine quilting as well. Quilting is quilting, and a lot of the principles are exactly the same. Now, isn't this overkill? Isn't this going too far? Aren't I being a great big perfectionist? This is what I hear from people from time to time. No, this is what custom quilting looks like. This is finessing something to bring about its greatest potential. Look at all the effort that went into the appliqué and embroidery. Custom means going the extra mile to make it look as good as you can get it to look. So I think it's well worth it. And look at that finished guy. Isn't that good looking? You can't see the stitches, but it's wonderful. Here is the sunlight playing up all the wonderful texture. It's so good. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.